Hi, and welcome to another episode of the Veterans Corner. We have another very informative show for you today. My name is Chuck Woodin. I'll be your host as always. We have two representatives, actually from two different organizations. We have Nancy McCloskey from BCO, Bristol Community Organization, and we have Pat Stebbins from Brian's Angels. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Thank you.
It's great to have you here.
Great to be here.
Why don't we go right in? We got a lot of stuff to cover. A lot of stuff. Why don't we just jump right into it? How did you two come to work together? Two different organizations, same town. Did you know each other beforehand, or?
No, actually, I had represented the Bristol Community Organization on the End Homelessness Task Force, and Pat joined the task force when she started Brian's Angels last summer.
And you guys have been working with each other since? Yeah.
Yes, quite a bit.
Yeah. Pat, tell the viewers about Brian's Angels. What do you do? How and when did you get started?
We got started last August the 19th exactly. I walk my dog around the downtown area frequently, and I got to see many of our homeless people and street people, and thought that it might be nice. My original idea was, let's just pass out water. It was in the heat of last August, and there was a young couple in a specific area that I saw daily sleeping, and I got stopped by them one day when I was walking my dog. She had lost both of her dogs when she lost her housing, and I just said on Facebook one day, let's pass out water, and there were 46 people the next day that offered to help. Within 2 weeks, I had $500, and it was an awful lot of money for ice water, so we went to making our toiletry packages. The group is actually in memory of my son, Brian, who I lost in '98 after a short period of homelessness and subsequent suicide. And once I got rolling, it was a great way to remember Brian.
Yeah, it was a good way to honor his memory.
Exactly.
How many homeless have you identified as veterans since you started your outreach program?
I know of 4 specifically. People don't always offer their backgrounds, and it takes a while for people to get to know you before they want to tell you their story. So I'm working with 4 people right now. One of them actually made it through boot camp, but was sent home on medical leave after boot camp, so he's really not entitled to a lot of the benefits that a veteran would normally get. So I saw him on the boulevard one day last year going by me with a grocery cart, and I think I let him get about 100 feet away from me, and I turned around with the dog and went running to him and asked him if he was homeless, and I set him up with a tent, sleeping bag, food, eventually a cook stove. So we get all the critical supplies out that normally the agencies don't have funding for. And it's all with private donations, all people from Bristol, and there's a few surrounding towns that are helping support the group. And I've said that I've been on hands-free since we started, because the community is really, whatever I've said I need for the homeless, usually it's there within a day or two. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And we found that with the warming center this winter.
Mm-hmm.
Have you seen that the veterans that you have identified, have you found that they are willing to identify other veterans? I mean, you think there's just 4? You think there's more out there?
The homeless, as a rule, are not going to identify anybody else for anything. Yeah. It's a group of people that wants to stay anonymous for the most part, and they're a very tight group most of the time, and look out for each other most of the time. Yeah. And they're just forgotten people. Many people have bad connotations of someone that's homeless, but I'm finding most of the time it's that they're either dealing with social issues, emotional issues, addiction issues. And there are some, the hope is that the homelessness would be ended. Yeah. However, it's a revolving door. There are going to be people that get into housing that can't maintain it, that are going to end up back on the street again for one reason or another. And I think what I'm seeing right now is those that want to stay on the street, it's more social issues.
Yeah.
They don't want to have to pay a rent. They don't want to have to worry about utilities. They're sort of Bristol's version of living off the grid.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we saw a lot of those folks this winter when the Bristol Community Organization opened the warming center at our location on South Street for the first time. And Pat's right, a lot of folks that we saw, and I counted that we saw 210 unduplicated individuals from December through the end of March when it was open. And these were people that kind of networked among themselves. They were people that we hadn't seen as clients of our agency to date. And so that's what we found. They had their own little resource and network where they trusted one another to come to the warming center. One person would tell another that it was a safe and comfortable place. So some of the folks that Pat started identifying and working with came to our warming center, and some came to our agency itself, and we were able to help them access services they might not have been getting, such as SNAP benefits or medical benefits. One of our very first clients at the warming center had been living in the woods in an encampment, and he had some health issues. And once he came to the warming center and we helped him access some services, he was able to get medical treatment and feel a lot better and become a more productive member of the community.
Yeah. You're with the BCO. You all know it as BCO.
Yep.
It's Bristol Community Organization. Can you tell us a little bit about the BCO?
Right. We're a private nonprofit community action agency. There are 10 in the state of Connecticut, and our agency serves the Bristol area, Plymouth, Burlington, Plainville, Farmington, and we have a variety of programs. Our energy assistance program is very popular, and we have a retired and senior volunteer program. We welcome those 55 and over to volunteer in the community. Saves a lot of state and federal resources to have folks with backgrounds and expertise working in nonprofits. My department is the social services department. We wear many hats. We do whatever it takes to get people stabilized. We do case management for people, and we meet a lot of folks through networking too. For example, I'll give you one example that happened just recently, and this gentleman happened to be a veteran. He came in presenting with the most dreaded of all pieces of paperwork, an execution for an eviction for that very morning. He had been living in his dad's trailer, and his dad had gone to assisted living, and it was foreclosed upon. So it was literally too late. They were probably at his home moving his belongings that day. But our data intake sheet at the BCO asks a question, are you a veteran? And he had circled yes. So of course we take a look at that, and we sat him down and we led him to some other resources in town. We partner with many local resources such as Army Strong for now and the City of Bristol Community Services. So we worked all together that day in getting him a bus pass and a food card, an emergency food card, and he was able to go access some veteran services. He had to go to Rocky Hill that day. He saw us at 9 o'clock, and he was on the road until 4 p.m. that day. When I saw him the next day at my agency, the first thing he said to me is, I'm housed. And I want everybody to know that it can happen that quickly. I think what we're all doing together is working. He had gone to Rocky Hill. He was going to be staying that night for the following 3 nights in a shelter in Hartford, and then he was going to be housed in a rooming house in East Hartford, and then transitioning to his own apartment. And this gentleman, I should say, had lost his job, so he's going to also connect with some other services like that. And I believe at the Veterans Center in Rocky Hill, they helped him identify that he's eligible for some money, $1,000 every month. He didn't even know he was going to be getting. So
There's a lot of services that the veterans are not aware of they're eligible for.
yeah, it was astonishing to us, but it was a really good eye-opener in how fast it can work. So I was happily astonished.
That was one of the reasons why we put this show together a few years back, to try to let not only the veterans know, but their families, just get the word out there.
Right.
What's available, and there's so many areas that they can turn to for help. They just don't know it.
Right.
How does, I guess we just briefly went over a little bit as far as your agency and how they target and serve the veterans.
Well, there's a couple of other ways too. For example, we run the State Department of Housing's Security Deposit Guarantee Program, and that is a program where people who are income eligible and categorically eligible can get a voucher for a security deposit. And the veterans have a separate application for that because there's a special pool of funding. So there are definitely resources available for that. So I encourage anyone who's a veteran to come in and seek that out. If they're moving and they need a security deposit, we'll be happy to screen them for eligibility and help them access that benefit and service.
Do you find, you've been doing this for a number of years,
Right.
do you find that there's more veterans taking advantage of it?
I think so. I definitely think so. I think with the presence of the Army Strong Community Center in our community, I think it has helped them network a lot more with local resources. And I think people too are more conscious of acknowledging veterans. And you know, while I have a moment, I think I'll talk about the quilt on the table. We have a friend of the BCO who is disabled herself, and she wants to give back to the community as much as she can with her limited income. And as a matter of fact, I have to give a shout out to Brian's Angels because she cannot even really afford yarn for as fast as she knits. So we just put a message out on Facebook at any given time, and I'll be inundated with yarn, you know, for this knitter. And particularly, she specializes in these flag quilts. It's amazing. It's a full-size quilt, and it's the second one she's knitted. The first one we auctioned off at a veterans dinner at Grace Baptist Church, and this one I was thinking of saving for when the Vietnam Memorial Wall comes to town, the replica, and maybe doing a little drawing for it there.
Yeah, it'd be a
Good
good
idea.
location.
That's perfect.
You know, it's, I mean, little things like this mean a lot to those that are out there.
It does. It means a lot to the giver, and it means a lot to the recipient too.
You know, you were talking about the this past winter, over 200 that have checked into the BCO, the warming center.
Right, homeless folks, and also just those folks that maybe couldn't afford to heat their homes during the day. You know, fuel was getting expensive. We have our energy assistance program, but it doesn't provide 100%. And then it kind of grew. It became a community resource center too for those seeking to keep warm. And we had other services, like, for example, we had someone come in and do career exploration and resume writing. We had food we didn't know we were going to have. We had an enormous community response where we would have, via Facebook, a lot of times just strangers or friends of our organizations come in with soup, food, meatballs, pizzas. We had Papa John's, I have to give a shout out, donate free pizza every Wednesday. So, of course, we had a crowd that day.
Yeah.
And it was really a wonderful experience. I have to say, we're not secure in funding for the following year. We got some City of Bristol Development Authority funding this year that got us started, and we're really not in their budget this year.
Right.
We're hoping at the end of the year something comes through for us.
It would be great to have a resource like that year-round, someplace where homeless, needy can take a shower, go watch TV, go do some laundry. The homeless do not have a place to shower. Community services, one of the community services ladies has set up showers by appointment, daytime only at the Boys and Girls Club when there's nobody else there. But other than that, and if they're not aware of that program, a lot of cities have drop-in centers where people can just come, watch TV, get off the streets so that people are not complaining about the people on the streets. It's not leaving the library loaded down because we have quite a few people. It's been a burden on the library, which was one of the reasons that the warming centers were open. There were two. There was one at BCO and there was a weekend one at St. Vincent de Paul, and they both closed the same time.
Yeah. You know, I know we had a big show, and I'm ashamed to say, I'm trying to remember what it was. It was a couple of years ago. One of the shelters in Hartford, they were on, and I actually went out there, and they were loaded. lot of homeless veterans, and there was just homeless everywhere.
Right.
It was one of those areas that they can stop in and take a shower. Hopefully by
needed.
the end of the show I can remember what the you
What
get
it
so
was.
many that come on the show. I'm trying to remember, but it's seasonal trends. Do you find that there's more in the winter time, summer? Is there any?
That's
Depends.
Yeah, that's an interesting question, but now that I'm thinking of the answer, it seems both. This winter they came out because we had a place for them to keep warm. Normally I would think that we wouldn't see too many.
And be
And
at the library.
same thing in the summer. In the summer, I think that they're more out in the boulevard. They're attending a lot of our events. We certainly welcome them and take an opportunity to connect them to resources too at that time.
I mean, we were lucky this winter. I mean, it was winter. It was cold.
Right.
It was certainly cold enough, too cold to be outside, but we were lucky other than that one little span that weekend, I think it was, where it was all below zero.
Right.
We really didn't have our traditional cold winter this year. And, when you get the cold winters, all the major cities, they announce it on the major news networks,
Right.
the warming centers, and they mentioned BCO.
Yep.
So we went over seasonal trends. What are some of the other services you would like to see in the community as far as helping out the homeless?
Right.
Drop-in
Well,
center.
Pat mentioned one, a drop-in center, just something we almost envision a first floor apartment kind of setup, maybe where Brian's Angels can have an office. Right now, Pat works out of her car and out of her apartment, and was working a little bit out of the warming center in the winter.
That was
But
great.
almost like an apartment where we have kitchen facility and laundry facility and shower facility. I don't know if that's possible. That's got a monthly expense, but that would kind of be a dream. It would serve a number of purposes. The other thing too is with the Elms Men's Transitional Living Center closing here in Bristol. We were sad to see that go, but there's certainly a movement in town to turn that into some veterans housing. So we're really keeping our fingers crossed
That'd be
that
great.
funding comes through for that. And of course, everything is dependent on funding, but we're hoping, that our government is, considering funding something like that in our community.
You've got the drop-in centers. I mean, each season it's equally as important.
That's right, absolutely.
Absolutely.
Summertime to cool off, wintertime to.
That's how
to
the idea
warm
for
up.
the water came about, the heat.
You had mentioned Army Strong. Are there any other local organizations that help you, with the issues?
Yeah, actually, we recently lost a staff person to Chrysalis Center. They have she went to work at Chrysalis Center helping veterans. So she is going to be working in Rocky Hill, but trying to find them housing, primarily finding them housing. So we're working with her, ironically, she's working with us to try to identify some affordable housing options in the Bristol community, and the people that she helps are going to be still connected to community services and agencies such as ours to make sure that if they're stable in housing, all their other needs are met too.
We're mentioning the up in Rocky Hill area. Do you get any help from them? I mean, other than just the usual. I mean, there was a big push on ending veteran homelessness.
Right. Well, I'm seeing that it worked pretty speedily. Like, for example, the gentleman that came in one day with the execution, and the next day he announced that he was housed. And the system right now, through Coordinated Access Network, is for any homeless person to dial 211 and get into that system to have an intake. And it's a rather long process. If you're homeless, it's several weeks even to get an appointment. Veterans do not have to access the Coordinated Access Network by calling 211. They have special consideration, and they kind of get fast-tracked directly to Veteran Services. So they can bypass that long waiting period for an intake. And I think I saw that in action just the other day, so happy to see that it works.
That's great. I know they got the grounds up there in Rocky Hill. They got I don't know how much housing they have, but it appears to be, quite a bit up there. And I think they were talking about across the street on West Street,
Right.
adding some more housing. And then over at the VA, I think there was some over there in Newington. We've actually got about 5 minutes left. I mean, is there anything else that you might want to discuss that we haven't touched on? How about how often do you go out in the public, or, go to the areas that usually the homeless are at, to try to take a count? I know, was it once a year or something like that?
Is it once or twice the pit
It's
count?
just once, and the
Once.
homeless count is in January. So we always say, why does it have to be in the dead of winter? But it is in January nationwide, and they do an unduplicated count. And you participated in that this year. I've done it many
we
years.
had
but
8 or 10 people from Brian's Angels, so they were able to have a lot more volunteers this year to go count people.
Why in January? Is there any reason for that, or is it just what they picked?
It's just what they picked, and it's
Yeah.
nationwide. I know it's cold
Yeah,
in
it's
the northern
federal.
part of the
Yeah.
country, but it's occurring everywhere in the country on that day.
It might be easier to try to take account of them, because a lot of them might be drawn to the centers.
I think they're in one spot, at least in the Northeast. They're in one spot, so you can kind of find them where they are. And the city is mapped out in grids, and people that go do the count are assigned a grid. But another interesting question I thought you were going to ask is, where does Pat go to do her homeless outreach? And she does go to the encampments. She'll kind of beat the
Go to
bushes.
the can't even talk straight now. Salvation Army. I go into the fast food places a lot of times. One of the things we try to pass out frequently is the $5 gift cards for McDonald's, Dunkin' Donuts, Burger King, because they can at least go out of the weather and get a cup of coffee. Everybody wants a morning cup of coffee.
That's a good way to warm up. I mean,
Or cool down in the summer.
Yeah.
the population, have you seen it increased? Has it fluctuated? Does it go like this? Is it declining?
To me, it feels like it's increased, but I don't know if it's because I only started last August, so I don't know if it's because I just know more people. I saw a number of people right after Easter end up homeless for one reason or another. And we do supply tents. If we know somebody's sleeping outside, they can get a tent, sleeping bag, 1-burner stove. We went from water to very large supply bags with shaving supplies and whatever they need
Once
to
you
get
talk,
through.
we only have a couple minutes left, or a minute left. I mean, I don't know if you want to open it or just show the bag itself. And
Well,
It's kind of a survival bag.
it is. Always a good pair of socks, and I'll guarantee you that any homeless person could probably go through 2 pair a week,
yeah.
because obviously they don't
A
get
lot of
clean.
walking.
But we have Tylenol and shaving cream, toothpaste, toothbrush, Kleenex.
Crackers and cheese.
Yep, crackers. It's just about everything. Oh, and tuna fish. Try to get a protein in there. Antibacterial.
Yeah, I mean, how many of those do you usually pass out?
We've been trying to do 50 bags every meeting. We haven't had a meeting in 2 months, but we had St. Matthew's School do a school-wide collection, and they donated about 20 of these bags, plus women's pocketbooks, and a lot of canned food. Girl Scout Troop 6079 just did up some big bags of food, and they did little bags of toiletries. We've had a couple of other scout troops, and I wish I had brought the numbers with me, that we've had Girl Scouts and Boy Scouts participate. A school in Burlington just helped us at our March meeting. We had our meeting on March 23rd this year. It was Brian's birthday, and it was the first time I had gotten to celebrate his birthday in such a great way since he passed.
Now, we're just about out of time. I was wondering if is there a website that you might want to tell the viewers that they can get in touch with you, or just by Facebook?
Facebook is great.
Facebook, yeah, we haven't gotten a website yet, but if they go to Brian's Angels Homeless Outreach, they can contact me and see about participating.
All right. Excuse me. Another great show. Really appreciate you being here.
Well, thank you
It
so
was,
much. We appreciate the exposure. Thank you.
You know, I want to thank the viewers for tuning in tonight, and you know, like I said, once again, another great show, and I guess that's all the time we have for tonight.
Thank you so much.
Thanks again, and hope to see you the next time on a Veterans Corner. Good night.